Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have swatches for you from a few different brands that will be shown in the Indie Shop event on May 19th. So Colors for Nails is a stockist and they carry a bunch of different brands, and they will have a table at the Anaheim Indie Shop event on the 19th. So I do have a few brands to share with you today that are exclusive to that table. So of course I have some Colors by Llarowe, I have some Cadillaquer, and then I have a couple brands that are totally new to me, the first being Moo Moo Signatures. I do have a couple from this brand. I've never tried them yet. And then the second one that I've never tried from Lacquester, which I've never tried nor heard of, but they are beautiful. So I'm really excited to delve into these and show them to you and see what you think. So in the description box below, I will link the Color for Nails site, their Instagram page, and all 4 indie makers' Instagrams and sites. These aren't going to be available on their website, only at the Indie Shop event, but it is a good representation of the brand themselves if you were interested in anything from today's video. I will also put all pricing and all of that good stuff in the description box below as well as my Instagram page if you were interested in seeing swatches, like still photos of anything from today's video. So I have 3 from each brand, 12 polishes total, and let's go ahead and get started. So starting with Cadillaquer, we have Who Says We Have to Grow Up, and this is a bright neon pink with some iridescent flakies, gold flakies, and it looks like maybe a bright purpley shimmer. So here's our first coat of Who Says We Have to Grow Up. This has a fantastic formula, easy to use, easy to work with, no running or pulling, and it is pretty opaque here on this first coat. You do get a ton of flakies out without having to do any kind of manipulation to the bottle, holding it upside down, shaking it, anything crazy like that. Here's our second coat, and it does cover completely in 2 coats, but I am going to add a third coat because I wanted to layer up those flakies as much as possible. If you're not into that though, this does cover completely in 2 coats just fine. It is going to dry down a little bit dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, but it does dry relatively smooth. Those flakies aren't going to dry textured or anything like that, and they're also not going to stick to your nails and be difficult to remove. So here's my third coat, and like I said, it was completely opaque, but I like to add a third coat of this one just because I like to build up those flakies. This one also looks really beautiful with a matte top coat. It helps those flakies stand out even better, and the shimmer in this, even being a light neon base, is nice. So there's 3 coats. Up next we have Don't Just Fly Soar, and this is a cerulean base with those same flakies. I believe it's an iridescent flaky, and then this one has a scattering of a hollow. Here's our first coat of Don't Just Fly Soar. This is a little bit sheer here on this first coat, but it does have that same easy to work with formula, very easy to use. It's very beginner friendly. It doesn't want to run or pull or anything like that. And it does apply really evenly as well. You get a good amount of flakies out with this one also without having to do anything to the bottle, just like the last one. Here's our second coat, and this builds up really nicely on 2 coats, but I am going to go ahead and add a third coat. It does deepen the color just a little bit more, and it adds, again, more of those flakies to make it look more 3-dimensional on your nails. This one, just like the last one, is going to dry a little bit dull, but it is going to dry completely smooth. You will want a nice glossy top coat to make everything look nice and cohesive, or if you want those flakies to stand out, this one is also a good contender for a matte top coat. So here's our third coat, and for me this does cover completely in 3 coats. If you work in thicker coats, 2 would probably be just fine for you. Nothing in here is going to stick to your nails or be difficult to remove, just like the last polish, so you won't need like a peel off base coat or pure acetone. So there is 3 coats. And then lastly from Cadillaquer we have Mermaid, and this is a tealy base with a blue micro glitter and then a like turquoisey teal shimmer. Here's our first coat of Mermaid. This one is pretty sheer here on this first coat. It is going to have to be built up, but it does have a really good formula, no running, pulling, staining, anything like that. You get a nice amount of glitter out without having to shake or fish or anything like that, but they are relatively small, so I kind of expected that. Here's our second coat, and this one is starting to build up here on 2 coats, but it is going to need a third. This one also dries down really dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, and that's also going to help smooth out the texture that the glitter in here creates. So being that there are micro glitter all throughout this, it is going to stick to your nails, so when you're applying this, you will either want a peel-off base coat, or it's going to take a little bit of scrubbing with pure acetone. Here's our third coat, and this one does cover completely in 3 coats, but it makes it look very nice and like three-dimensional. I can definitely see the Mermaid inspiration behind this one. Again, it is going to dry a little bit textured, so a nice thick glitter-eating top coat. So there is 3 coats. Moving on to Colors by Llarowe, we have Spinning Cups of Tea, and this is described as a semi-sheer bright pink base with unicorn pea pigment and aurora pigment that shifts red to gold to green. Here's our first coat of Spinning Cups of Tea. This is pretty sheer here on this first coat. It does have a good formula. It's a little bit on the thicker side, but it is very easy to work with. It's that thick where it stays right where you put it. I didn't have any running or pooling or staining with this one either. It does just leave a nice wash of color on your nails. So here's our second coat, and this one is building up in 2 coats, but it is going to need 3. And the more coats that you add of this, the more you like deepen that base color, the more that shimmer is going to stand out on your nails as well. I have found with the polishes that I have with the unicorn pigment in it, tend to be on the thinner side because it is something that needs to be built up to stand out. So this covers about 90% on 3 coats here. I am going to go ahead and stop at 3 coats for my video, but I did go ahead and add an extra one for my swatch photo, and that did achieve full opacity. This one does dry pretty glossy on its own, though I would recommend a nice glossy top coat to keep everything nice and cohesive. So there is 3 coats. Up next we have Mickey's Main Street, and this is described as an aqua green intense linear hollow with pink to green shimmer. Here is our first coat of Mickey's Main Street. Again, another fantastic formula, easy to use, no running, no pooling. This color, this like shade of blue, does tend to stain, but I did want to go ahead and say I had 0 staining here. And these little, it's like a micro glitter, but it's not. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and say, is that it's not a micro glitter, but it looks like it could be. So it's not going to stick to your nails, and it's not going to dry textured. So here's 2 coats, and this does cover completely in 2 coats. It's also going to dry much more holographic than when it goes on. And it is going to dry just slightly dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, and that's going to help the hollow stand out in general as well. So there is 2 coats. And lastly, from Colors by Llarowe, we have Pinch of Pixie Dust, and this is described as a blurple base with prismatic hollow flake and intense pink to green shimmer. Here is our first coat of Pinch of Pixie Dust. And again, a beautiful formula from Colors by Llarowe. No running, no pooling, anything like that. And this covers pretty well here on this first coat, but it is going to have to be built up. There are a ton of little micro flakies in here, like this is completely packed. Those little micro flakies that are in there aren't going to dry textured, they will dry pretty smooth, and they're not going to be difficult to remove as in sticking to your nails, but I feel like there are tiny holographic micro glitter in here that aren't difficult to remove, but it will take just a little bit of extra scrubbing. This does cover completely in 2 coats, and you will want a nice glossy top coat to make everything look nice and put together, so there is 2 coats. Moving on to Lacquester, we first have Mara. This is like a mauve gray base with a gold shimmer, scattering of hollow, and those ultra chrome chameleon flakies that go from like a gold to a green to a bronze. Here is our first coat of Mara. This one has a pretty good formula on it as well. I didn't have any kind of running or pulling. It is just a little bit sheer here on this first coat. This brand does have very, very wide brushes, so that is like a learning curve for me because I usually stick with like the thin to medium brushes. You get a good amount of flakies out without having to do anything special. For me, this covered completely in 2 coats. Depending on your preference and application, a 3rd coat will add a ton more flakies, and it'll look a little bit more full, if that makes any sense. It dries pretty glossy on its own, but you will want a nice glossy top coat to keep everything looking nice and smooth. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Zela. This is a light pinky, again almost mauve-y, except the last one was obviously more gray. This is much more pink of a mauve-y, and it has a scattering of a hollow. It also has like a linear hollow effect right there. This also has tiny flakies, and then it has a super strong copper shimmer. So here is our first coat of Zela. And this has the same formula as the previous polish, easy to use, easy to work with. It did just take me a hot second to get used to such a wide brush, but it is nice and rounded at the tip, so it does make painting around your cuticles very easy. A little bit sheer here on this first coat, but it is going to build up really, really nicely and cover completely in 2. You don't get a ton of flakies out, but you get a good amount to give it that like speckled egg kind of look. These also from this brand will dry down a little bit dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, but nothing in this polish is going to be difficult to remove or require a peel off base coat or anything like that. The flakies should come out really, really easily. So there is 2 coats. And then lastly we have Rona, and this is like a darker purple pinky mauve and it has the unicorn pea pigment in it, and then it also has like a coppery shimmer. Here's our first coat of Rona. Again, a nice formula, no running or pulling, pretty easy to use, easy to work with, just a little bit sheer here on this first coat. The shimmer in here already stands out pretty nicely, but when it is built up and that base color is completely opaque, it really jumps off your nails with this one. So here's our second coat, and I stopped here at 2 coats, but when I went to do my swatch photos, I did go ahead and add a 3rd coat, so I would say this is anywhere from a 2 to 3 coater. It dries a little bit dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, and that's also going to help that shimmer stand out really, really nicely. And nothing in this polish either is going to be difficult to remove or stick to your nails or make a mess on your skin or anything like that. So there's 2 coats. And then moving on to Moo Moo Signatures, up first we have Lava Rose, and this is described as a cherry red with multichrome shimmer that shifts from blue to orange to red with tiny blue and purple flakies. Here's our first coat of Lava Rose. And this covers really, really well here on this first coat. I can still see just a pinch of my nail line, so I am going to go ahead and go in for a second coat. The formula on this is absolutely fantastic, no running, pooling, or staining, and the shimmer in here already being on the first coat stands out absolutely beautifully. Nothing in this polish either is going to stick to your nails or be difficult to remove. So here's our second coat, and this one does cover completely in 2 coats, but it was very, very close to one where if you absolutely needed to do only 1 coat, you could probably get away with this one. You will want a nice glossy top coat. It dries decently glossy on its own, but it doesn't dry like extremely glossy, and it's also going to help that shimmer stand out really nicely as well. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Baby Crocodile, and this is described as a pastel green with 2 types of pink shimmer and a tiny flaky. Here's our first coat of Baby Crocodile. And this one goes on nice and smooth and just squishy and gorgeous, and it reminds me of a jellyfish. Like this kind of finish reminds me of a jellyfish. I realize it's green. I'm going to stop talking about that. Again, this has a nice, easy to work with formula, no running or pulling or anything like that. It is a little bit on the thicker side, but it's that kind of thick where it stays right where you put it. It doesn't apply the most even, so you do have to be a little bit careful, and I do recommend working in thicker coats. I am going to go ahead and show you what 3 coats looks like, but I still couldn't get it completely smooth. When I did wear this on my own, I took my swatch photos, I did 3 coats. I paint at a weird angle, so it makes it a little bit difficult for me to get my brush strokes the way I would paint like otherwise. So it looks pretty streaky here still on 3 coats, but I was able to get streak-free 3 coats when I did my photos. And it does cover completely in 3 coats. It's just, you know, it does dry really glossy on its own, and that shimmer in there doesn't stand out too much on the nail, but it is a nice, subtle, extra something that's like a surprise. So there is 3 coats. And then lastly we have Enchanted Feather, and this is described as a slate gray with deep violet shimmer and tiny flakies. And I'm pretty sure the flakies that are in here, this one and Baby Crocodile, are like an iridescent flaky. And here's our first coat of Enchanted Feather. This is a little bit sheer here on this first coat, but it does build up really nicely. The shimmer in here is going to build up really nicely as well and be very strong on the nail once it is completely built up. This also has a really good formula, no running or pulling. I also didn't have any staining with this, and nothing in this polish is going to be difficult to remove or dry textured or anything like that. So here is our second coat, and with a thicker second coat it does become completely opaque. I did only do 2 coats for my swatch photo, but in the video it looks like there are some light spots, but I promise there aren't. Again, this one dries down a little bit dull, so you will want a nice glossy top coat, but it does dry completely smooth. There's nothing textured in here. So there is 2 coats. So I have 4 brands. I feel like I am allotted 4 favorites. So my favorite from Colors by Llarowe is called Pinch of Pixie Dust. I love these blurply shades. I love like the strong pinky fuchsia-y shimmers. And this one is just so special with the tiny holographic micro glitters. So I really, really love this one. From Cadillaquer, my favorite was Who Says We Have to Grow Up. These bright pinks, they scream at me, they call to me, and the little flakies in here are just absolute perfection with an awesome formula. So I love this one. From Moo Moo Signatures, Baby Crocodile is my favorite. I don't have anything like this shade. It is a super, super light avocado-y, greeny yellow with that beautiful, beautiful shimmer that I just die for. I love this. And then my favorite from Lacquester is called Mara, and this is just everything that I love in a polish and more. I love the flakies in here, the shimmer in here, the formula of this. Like, if you know me and my channel at all, you know this screams at me and I can't get enough. And guys, that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of today's video. Let me know what you thought of the polishes. Let me know what your favorite was. Let me know if you're attending the event. Let me know if you're planning on picking any of them up. Just talk to me because I love hearing from you guys. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and I will talk to you again next time.